Hello, good morning, everybody, and thank you to Kyoto Club for inviting and involving us in presenting our experience. I will try to stay in time, but I wanted to show you two experiences about economic policies of the city of Bologna in Italy, so local policies. Two experiences deal. The first one with the climate mitigation, so the reduction of CO2 actually, and the second one with climate adaptation. So how to adapt the city, how to make your city, your local community more resilient in order to reduce and avoid the risks coming from climate change. We can go on with the slide. Okay, well, possibly most of you know where Bologna is. It's in the north part of Italy. Actually, the municipality of Bologna is the core of a small metropolitan area with almost 200 million inhabitants. We can go on. The distribution of population. We can go to the next slide. The distribution of settlement. So we can move to the next slide. As you can see, the picture of the city by night, the settlements are quite scattered in the territory. We have a certain experience in organizing our urban planning, considering even energy issues. So, as I said, we have some experience in combining the local urban planning with energy planning. The work we have done in the previous year was to single out some areas that we have called urban energy basins. Sorry for some slides being in Italian. And those basins are areas characterized by urban transformation in ongoing urban transformation and some opportunities, for example, the presence of district heating or district heated areas, the intense presence of buildings with poor energy characteristics, and so on. So in the plan, we have when we prepared the urban plan, we have singled out for any of those areas some specific rules in order to have new settlements with very high energy performances. In the building code, moreover, we have defined some specific requirements for energy saving, for the increase of green area in private spaces, for water saving, and for the intelligent use of materials for building. So the idea was to recover as much material from existing buildings as possible. And what we've done was to foresee the possibility of building bigger volumes in case the project showed that those requirements were fully respected. So there were some high levels requested. If the project could meet those high levels, then there was a bonus, an increase in the volume you could build. What about our energy planning? We have some an energy planning framework. It has been already discussed in previous presentations. We have even a local framework, so both regional and metropolitan energy strategies. Within this framework, we have started developing our Sustainable Energy Action Plan, which dates back to 2012. So it's a rather old instrument. We are now developing the new one right now. As you already know, this plan has been prepared within the European framework of Covenant of Mayors. So I don't think it's you need to repeat what Covenant of Mayors is, but what is important is that this initiative of Covenant of Mayors was a very big success among Italian cities, and Bologna was one of those cities who signed the covenant and started preparing the plan. The idea was that the actions of our plan should be as much as discussed with the stakeholders, especially as possible. So we did a very deep involvement process. This is just an image of the starting meeting of this process in order to make everybody feel like he or she is a real actor of the plan. The pattern of consumption in Bologna is almost is this one. The pattern of CO2 emissions, sorry, which is more or less energy consumption, is more or less this one. So as you can see, the 28%, so almost 30%, is consumed in offices, in tertiary, in commercial building, while the 35% is emitted in existing residential buildings. So if we sum those two bigger parts of the cake, we obtain that 65% of CO2 emissions are produced by energy used in buildings, both services and residential. And this shows how important it is for cities to take the lead in the climate actions. As you can see, there are some other parts of the cake which are important as well, such as transports, industry, and so on. Okay, I think we can stop with this slide because with this presentation and skip to the other one, because after this the presentation will be shared. You can have a look at it or send questions, but after this you just have a detail about the actions and so on. So we can go to the second presentation about the adaptation plan. Okay. So I just was saying that we have an adaptation plan as well, but you can find the information on internet, or we can organize a further webinar if useful. But it's nice to stay on to be more specific on our energy plan, just because I think that even if there are so many different elements among Italy, Turkey, and other countries, but I think that there are even more common elements. So it's useful to enter into the details. For example, I mentioned that the two sectors which are more energy demanding in cities are related to buildings, namely services and residential. What about residences? Actually, you can see that the problem is not the amount of energy consumed in residences, but the fact that this energy, mostly heating in Bologna, this energy is consumed in a very ineffective way. Which means that new buildings should consume 90, now even less. This slide is not updated, 90 kilowatt hours per square meters per year for heating, while the average building, the average existing building, so included a new one and old one, obviously, consume almost twice. So the real problem is not the consumption, but the fact that most of the energy used for heating is wasted. So there is a huge possibility for reducing the consumption in heating. What are the barriers for that? The first barrier is that almost half of those of the dwellings are heated with autonomous heating. They have a boiler in the dwelling, and so it's difficult to organize a massive substitution of the plants. Only half of the dwellings are heated by a central boiler or district heating. Another element is that most of the dwellings, 65 actually, are owned by occupants. So if you look at the building, a multi building with many flats, the building has as many owners as flats actually, and this means that it's very difficult to intervene in hard way, because there is not a single owner who takes care for the investments and who takes care for changing the structure of the building, but it's up to the decision of many people. Some of them are old people, some of them are not rich people, and so when we come to spending a lot of money, it's quite difficult. The rate of intervention on buildings is approximately 5% every year. It's a very rough number, but it's quite it's a good approximation, and it's more or less the same in all Italy. This means that if we achieve a good energy performance of all the 5% of buildings every year, it will take us 20 years to achieve a good energy performance of the whole city. Obviously, this is a very basic calculation, but just to say that we need to speed up. We need to speed up in some way. So this theme of emissions in residential building is the hard task of our plan. If we go to the services, the situation is quite different because we have in Bologna at least, very big buildings where the emissions are in some way controlled by people in charge for energy consumption, what we call energy managers. For example, you see the trade fair, which is a district, the university, which is a group of many buildings scattered in the city, some big hospitals, and so on. So the good news with services is that in that case, we have some very big premises where it is easier, and it's even economically interesting to intervene from energetic point of view. And as a matter of fact, many interventions, even with the support of European funding, many interventions have been done on those buildings. If we go to mobility, the characteristic of many Italian cities is that a lot of people rely on transport by their own car, which is different from other European countries. But in Italy, private car is really used very much. We have more or less a vehicle for 50 vehicles per 100 inhabitants, so a vehicle any two people. What is the problem with public transport? The problem with public transport is that we only have roads, so we don't have an underground train, we don't have effective bus lanes, so the speed of public transport is the same speed of the car in the traffic jam. So it's not really considered as an effective alternative